Max Fried has climbed Ace Mountain, proven by a 2022 in which he was a first-time All-Star, winner of a third straight Gold Glove, and all punctuated by a Cy Young runner-up in the NL. You're watching BPTV, Cory McCartney and Grant McAuley here. And Grant, the Max Fried resume just continues to keep getting more and more impressive as he establishes himself among the game's best.
It really does. And as you looked at all of the different trades, moves, draft picks, whatever it was that went into rebuilding the Braves, I don't know if Max Fried can be outdone by any other player that was acquired from outside the organization and plugged into Atlanta's, the 26-man roster and, of course, their 5-man rotation, because as you just pointed out, he has turned himself into a bona fide ace, and those are in short supply.
And as we run through what went right, what went wrong, and what's next for this exercise, Fried threw a career-high 185 and 2/3 innings over 30 starts in 2022, going 14-7 with a 2.48 ERA that was third in the NL, struck out 170 batters to 32 walks. Fried's ERA, by the way, the fourth lowest among Braves lefties in the live ball era, trailing only seasons by Hall of Famers Tom Glavine and Warren Spahn. And it's 5.0 F4, the third best by a southpaw since the team moved to Atlanta in 1966. Again, just behind Glavine. It really speaks to what Fried has become, Grant, that he can have that kind of a season, an F4 that's a career high for him, and almost gets overshadowed by Spencer Strider's historic debut and Kyle Wright's ascension.
Yeah, I think in some ways he may have, but the one thing that Max Fried has, and I mean this no pun intended, is a leg up on his other compatriots in that rotation, because he was also the guy that really answered the bell in Game 6 of the World Series, got stepped on in the very first inning, then turned around and put in an ace-level performance to help the Braves close out the Astros and win the World Series for the first time in over 2.5 decades. So when you do look at that, I feel like while Max Fried, his brilliance might be a little bit quieter than perhaps all of the strikeouts that you were seeing for Spencer Strider, and of course the 21 wins that Kyle Wright turned in last year, first time the Braves had a 20-game winner in nearly 2 decades himself, Max was just one of the things that just seemed to be just set in place, a kind of a set it and forget it, if you will, in the rotation. But he did seem to just get better. Maxed his career high in starts, set a career high in innings, as you mentioned. He was able to maintain his K rate while lowering his home runs per 9, lowering his walks per 9, and just turning in one of the best seasons that you'll see out of a lefty in a Braves uniform since the Tom Glavine days. And when you look at the run of division titles that the Braves are on right now, and you look at the run of division titles the Braves went on through the 90s, hey, you needed to cast for a left-hander to help anchor your rotation, and I think Max Fried has answered that casting call, and perhaps he will just continue to be booked in sequel after sequel. He's got at least 2 more under contract right now before they got to figure out the future of Max Fried long-term.
I'll say the one thing about Fried is we now expect greatness out of him. I think that's what, that's why it's so easy to sometimes forget that in a season like he had last year, just because that's what you're looking for in a season when you've got a guy like Max Fried on the mound. And seemingly the only thing that could derail Fried this past season was the flu. He lost 15 pounds between his regular season start and the postseason, where he had the worst playoff outing of his career against the Phillies in the NLDS, lasting just 3 1/3 inning, allowed 4 runs on 8 hits. Quite the contrast to the last time that he took the mound in the postseason, that Game 6 in the World Series. There wasn't a lot wrong, Grant, in a season when he produced the 3rd lowest hard hit rate of his career, the lowest average exit velocity of his career in a 162-game season.
And let me tell you this about that playoff outing and the fact that he was sick as a dog over the final couple of weeks of the year. That playoff outing, that 3 2/3 innings, 3 1/3 innings, it's the first time that Max Fried did not complete 5 innings in a start in the entirety of the 2022 campaign. He was that consistently good. Now, were some starts better than others? Sure. But when you got an ERA just below 2.5 for the season, that lets you know that it's pretty consistently great. And he was able to gut through a very big performance against the New York Mets in the throes of being, I think, almost violently ill by the time he was done on the mound for the Braves, in helping sweep away the Mets and win the National League East. So Fried, he's a big money guy, I think, for the Braves. He is a guy capable of making some big starts on the biggest stage, and he wants to, I'm sure, add to that legacy and erase any doubt, any questions whatsoever, health or otherwise, that he can help this club win big in 2023.
So looking ahead, he's projected to have a 3.59 ERA, 3.2 F4, 190 strikeouts via steamer. The notion that Fried's numbers could drop year over year, I think, kind of speaks to the unknowns that come with the banning of the shift. Fried's a ground ball pitcher, the 6th highest rate in the NL since the start of 2019, the 7th most batters faced with the shift in place in that span. But regardless, I think once again, he figures to be in that conversation, the NL's best in 2023. And I think this just could lead to the next evolution in Fried's career as he figures out how to operate without the shift in place.
Yeah, and there are some unknowns for every pitcher, for every team, for the defense as they take the field, trying to figure out the best ways to kind of game the system as much as they can, knowing that they can't do certain things that they used to be able to do with defensive alignments. But Max Fried, when you think about this is somebody who has taken his arsenal, which was already very good as a prospect, and made it even better by adding, 3 more pitches, Corey, in his time in the big leagues? Yeah. I'm talking about viable pitches, and his ground ball rate is something that does speak to his success. I think a lot of people might be surprised to know that Mike Soroka, who was looked upon as kind of this sinker ball pitcher, he's going to get a lot of, ground balls and get a lot of weak contact. Max Fried's had a higher ground ball rate than Mike Soroka has throughout the course of his career. I know Mike hasn't pitched in a couple of years, but it just didn't seem to quite fit the profile with Fried because he misses more bats than a pitcher like Soroka did. So it's just been interesting. Every step along the way of the evolution, Max Fried has found a way to find success, and I think he can do it again in 2023. But even in those very, I don't want to call them pessimistic, but maybe just trying to temper the expectations for Max Fried this year, you can still expect 13 to 15 wins, maybe more, the 180 to 190 innings, maybe more. We'll see how that all plays out by the time he's done in the postseason, and he's going to be the competitor that he is. And I feel like that gives him an X factor that might not show up in all of the projections.
Yeah, Charlie Morton told me he's a guy that just, he's very cerebral about pitching. He finds ways to toys with batters, wants to mix different things in. I have, no quarrels whatsoever that the shift is not going to have any impact on Max Fried in 2023. I think he finds his way around that without question. The path to spring training continues, and we've got you covered here on BPTV. So be sure to subscribe and turn notifications to get an alert each and every time that we drop a new episode. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves Country.